Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. This is Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Geoff Mosher with me today. It's brought to you by the Atlantic City Airport. Plan your summer vacation now. Spirit Airlines is offering nonstop flights from Atlantic City International to Boston, Atlanta, San Juan, Miami, and other exciting destinations. Visit spirit.com. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. Geoff Mosher from InsideTheBirds.com. Interesting conversation yesterday with Adam Kaplan. He gave us a lot of numbers, over-unders, different things that some fantasy average spots today with Geoff. You know, he got a chance to go to some of the OTA stuff, and obviously, as he mentioned on Football at 4 before, there wasn't a whole heck of a lot going on there, but we did get an opportunity to kind of go ahead to see some of the battles that were anticipated at training camp. But one thing I think is kind of interesting, Moshe, as we look at this team, I think we're all taking for granted a lot of things, but how many guys do we look on this team that are really ready to kind of take a big jump this year? Who were some guys that, you know, hey, this guy had a good year last year, but could be even better this year? So who are some of those guys in your mind that might be primed for a bigger year than they had previously?
Yeah, Mike, and that's a big subject that we're doing across Inside the Birds. You know, Andrew DeCecco is also doing kind of a recap of the offseason, and one of his categories was who's poised to make a big jump this year. And one of his selections, and it's going to be a tough one. I sort of agree with it because the guy I think is talented. The only question will be about his kind of usage, and that's Milton Williams, who's a guy who was drafted in the third round last year, got a chance to really be the third defensive tackle by the middle of the year. He clearly overtook Hassan Ridgeway as the number 3 DT behind Hargrave and Fletcher Cox. And I thought as the season went on, he really progressed and started to look like a pretty good player. Not a starter yet, but definitely a good player. And here he is in year 2, poised to make a nice jump. But again, we sort of have to see what kind of alignment they use and how they use their defensive line going forward to wonder what kind of role he'll play. But because he can play defensive tackle and defensive end, which he did last year, there could be opportunities for him to play both of those positions and kind of make his mark there.
Yeah, we look at guys who could make a jump. I'll throw a couple guys your way and see what you're thinking about them. One guy I guess everybody's kind of putting in that category would be Quez Watkins. I mean, because the fact that he's going to be the third guy. But does that mean because he's the third guy that he's going to make a jump, or will that maybe cut him back a little bit?
You know, it's really interesting, and that's another usage question. Does he become the slot receiver who lines up, you know, inside and for a passing offense that's going to improve? Because that could theoretically put him in position to make a big jump. Or, as it's been argued, and I've heard Jason Avant and Quentin Michael talk about, his skill set is really more catered to the outside. Even if he's not getting the ball, he's stressing a defense deep. So he still might eventually wind up being a better option as a backup outside receiver. Or if you're going to go 4 wide and move 2 guys into the slot, he's one of the 2 outside guys. So he is poised to make a jump depending on his usage, but I would also put him in a category of you wonder if there'll be a plateau there with him, or maybe even a little bit of step back if somebody else, whether it's Zach Pascal or Jalen Reagor or anybody, kind of more becomes fitting of that slot receiver position and therefore gets more snaps.
Yeah, another guy that I guess you could ask, and I guess his usage as well, and I'm kind of interested where you go with this, is Davion Taylor, who I guess we don't know what his role might be, but I guess he was starting to make that jump and then got hurt. So yeah. I'm not sure where he kind of fits. Is he a guy that takes a jump this year, or is he kind of decline because of his playing time?
He's straddling that fence right now. If he can stay healthy, and not only stay healthy, but that's just half the battle for him. The second part of that would be to continue his development within a defense where he just hasn't had that much playing time. But if he can, then you count him as a player who could see more time on the field. But you would also consider him a good candidate for a decline because he's out there battling with Nakobe Dean and with Kaiser White and TJ Edwards. So whereas this time last year, he was a guy that they were really had high expectations for, and they were getting him on the field early, and they were trying to coach him up. Well, now they're going to start turning their attention to, Nakobe Dean, Kaiser White, and of course TJ Edwards coming back. So it could be that he's an odd man out in that situation.
Yeah. On the offensive side of the ball, it doesn't seem that there's a lot of guys that fit this category of players primed for a jump, I guess, unless you're talking about Jalen Hurts.
Well, yeah. I mean, Jalen Hurts, obviously. I mean, you can hold out hope that Jalen Reagor has a pretty low bar as far as being a breakout, like kind of Nelson Aguilar a few years ago. If you get 500 to 600 yards, it's like, hey, that's better than what we thought you were going to have. But I think two guys we can focus on offense as far as that. A couple of guys, actually. One is Kenneth Gainwell, who they clearly like, and they clearly liked in a role that we probably didn't anticipate last year. I mean, he probably had more red zone and goal line carries than anybody else among the ball carriers. He's a guy who can catch the ball out of the backfield. They needed that first year. Remember, he had opted out the year before, so last year was his first year back in football. So they kind of introduced him into the offense and gave him a role, and I would think that they would want to expand that role this year. So there's opportunity for him to make a pretty good jump, and we know that Miles Sanders has battled injuries. So if Miles battles injuries again, there's Kenneth Gainwell to kind of seize the moment. And then, although we don't often talk about like linemen, Landon Dickerson showed you he is a road grader of a left guard. It's going to be right there behind next to Jordan Mailata. That's going to be a mountainous left side of the offensive line. But I do feel like there were times last year where he came off the field and you thought, all right, so he's got the run blocking. You can tell he's massive, but he's got to really improve in the pass protection part of his game. His lateral movement's got to come back. He's dealt with all those knee injuries. So he could he was a top 20 talent without the injuries, right? So we could be talking about Landon Dickerson as a guy who might be a Pro Bowl guard.
I guess because we deem that he had a solid year as a rookie, that you're already assuming that he is a good player. You're not even thinking about him possibly taking another jump. But I guess you could possibly even wonder if there's more in Mailata, like for him to kind of improve.
Great one, Mike. I really also agree with you on that. I think he showed last year he understands how to use his body, his massive, frame in run blocking and smothering guys. I mean, he's good in pass protection, but I do feel like that's an area that he needs to improve on. And honestly, that's, with Dickerson, with the whole offensive line, they were a run-oriented team. They were a run-first team. So, and then by the time you got to the end of the year, you were not playing against a whole bunch of really good teams with really fearsome pass rushes. But you go back to that Raiders game, and those guys had some struggles against Max Crosby and Yannick Ngakoue. So I do think that, in general, this line has to show, not everybody. We know Lane Johnson's really good. We know Jason Kelsey's good. But some of the young guys got to show that their pass protection is going to be just as good as their run blocking.
Yeah, the left side of that line, I guess, collectively could take a jump together, right? That Dickerson-Mailata duo, we talked about it the other day. Pro Football Focus ranked the Eagles' offensive line as the best in football, and they might be getting better.
They really might be
collectively
getting better.
As a line.
That's the thing, they're young.
As a line, they might take the whole unit, when you talk about it, they're number one according to those rankings, however they get to those rankings, but they could even be a better line this year.
They absolutely could be. And we know that they have great depth as well. And we'll see what happens at right guard and who comes out of that. But yes, the forgotten guy, or maybe the obvious candidates, would be to say, hey, like Jalen Hurts and Devontae Smith are still young players who were first-year starters last year. They could take a jump, but I don't think either of those guys. Maybe more Jalen Hurts. I don't know if Devontae Smith makes that much bigger of a jump because he was really good. I mean, and now you've got another receiver in A.J. Brown here, and I think he can obviously have better numbers and be a 1,000-yard receiver, but he could have done that last year just by having a better pass offense around him. You know what I'm saying? I don't know that his skill set is going to improve that much. What will improve is the matches that he's able to be now that he kind of moves into that Z spot and is off the line of scrimmage a little bit and doesn't have to get pressed.
Do you put Josh Sweat in this category as a guy who could be primed for a jump?
I don't, Mike, and it's not that I think he's tapped out, but I think again, not yet knowing how this defense is going to look and the alignment. Of course, he's going to be out there to rush the passer. But I think you've seen what he is, and what that is pretty good. You know what I'm saying? I'm not trying. Trent Cole was a really good, like 8 to 10, like Brandon Graham, really good player that you kind of got used to seeing what you're seeing. I don't think you're going to see Josh Sweat jump to be a 13 to 15 sack kind of guy.
All right, so those are some of the guys, unless there's another guy, because I want to take a look in your mind, guys who could be on the decline here, because we're all excited about, hey, where this team could be. This roster looks pretty good, but some guys on this roster might not be as good as they've been, and I would imagine, I don't know this, but I'm going to guess that Fletcher Cox might be in this list.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, he'd have to be on your radar because the decline, you could argue, started a little bit last year. Now, you might say, well, he just was playing in a scheme that didn't cater to his strengths, but the scheme isn't really changing that much. Now, you might say because they have more depth here that he won't play as many snaps, might be fresh, and maybe you'll see a little bit of a renaissance. But I think you'd also have to be realistic and have your radar up for a potential decline there as well.
Where would you think Brandon Graham fits in there? As a guy who's on the decline?
Man, that's a phenomenal question, and that's seemingly only one that can be answered when he gets out there. He's played at the same good level for so long that we've gotten used to it, and all of a sudden he has a huge Achilles injury, right? And you come back and he's a year older and he's north of 30 by a couple of years. So, sure, I don't think anybody would be shocked, but I also don't think he's going to be playing nearly the same number of snaps that he's used to playing. So again, he might actually be able to get a little bit of a renaissance just by having a fresher body out there. Unlike, say, someone like Jason Kelce, right, who has been doing it for year after year after year, snap after snap, and at some point you think Father Time might catch up to him. And so he might be a player that you would wonder about because there's no, like, preserving his body.
I guess, dare I ask, would Darius Slay be on your mind as a decline?
I think some people might zero in on that and say, hey, he's a cornerback. He is over 30. He's coming off a really good year after 2 years ago being so that's a candidate. But I also think you could say that about James Bradbury. I mean, he's not coming off a great year. He's another year older. He's in a new defense. Now, I know that the scheme is supposed to be catered to his skill set, but how often do we go into a year thinking, oh, this guy is going to have a great, and it just doesn't happen what you thought it was. So they are better at cornerback, but they're not any younger at cornerback on the outside.
Yeah, Bradbury is another guy. I mean, both of these guys, much like Steven Nelson last year, they both made it through the whole season. So you didn't have that third guy. So that's something to keep an eye on. We're looking at guys we could watch for a decline. I guess we're talking about how good the offensive line would be, but what about Lane Johnson, Jason Kelce? I guess those would be two guys that you would be worried about. Do one or both have it in them to kind of take a drop off?
Yeah, I mean, again, you can never tell, but Lane keeps himself in such great shape. Not that Jason Kelce doesn't, but Lane is a workout warrior, part of the OL Masterminds program in the offseason, and he takes his training extraordinarily seriously. Not that Jason doesn't, but I know he's battled some injuries in the past. 2 years ago he had the tightrope surgery on the ankle, but last year he missed the 3 games due to leaving the team with anxiety and depression. And if you think back to Brandon Brooks, who went through it, once Brandon was able to get that under control, he emerged into the best right guard in football. Lane was widely considered one of the, if not the best right tackle already, and I thought he played well when he came back last year. So don't have as much concern about a decline in talent. Maybe, again, there's injury, but I always wonder, when is it going to catch up to Jason Kelce? He's played so many snaps now the last 3, 4, 5 years and has even considered retirement. But he's another guy, though, that definitely takes care of his body and plays so cerebrally that he knows how to kind of protect himself.
Do you get concerned at all with Miles Sanders? I mean, he doesn't have a lot of tread on the tire. Yeah. He's not a guy that they've really used as a workhorse back, but is that a concern?
Yeah, I think it's a fair concern. I mean, he's definitely bigger this offseason, so he's hit the weight room. That's good, bigger legs. But this is year 4, and I think everybody's kind of expected more since his rookie year, more and more, and really hasn't happened. And he's battled injuries, and now he's got Kenneth Gainwell looking down his shoulder, and he's got a contract situation that I think he said in a press conference he's taking. He didn't say he was mad at the organization. He just said this is a personal offseason for him. He's taking everything personally. And so that can either be a great motivator to go out and have a great year, or you could internalize, and if you had a bad game or two, all of a sudden you're kind of in the doghouse, or you're fumbling, or your head's not on straight.
Yeah. I know that you mentioned, I think it was yesterday, about Jordan Howard, or Monday, when Jordan Howard's out there, they know that he could kind of be there. But you wonder, do they enter the year without Howard? Do they, the guys that they have on this roster, if Sanders were to get injured, would they lean on one of the other guys as like that the second guy? Do they see as just a bit player, or would they look to say, all right, you're going to have a bigger role?
It's a good question. I mean, it's surprising how few running backs they have on the roster right now and went through OTAs. I think just 4?
Yeah.
Between Miles Sanders, Boston Scott, Kenneth Gainwell, and Kennedy Brooks. Jason Huntley.
Scott's been a guy, though, whenever they've called on Scott to do something, he always seems to answer the call.
He does seem to answer the call. So, I mean, it's like they're good from a number standpoint, but I agree that they kind of lack that downhill element that you want from an offense. And, I'd be shocked if they don't have some kind of sort of, quote, bigger power back by the time the season starts.
All right, Geoff Mosher.
And by the way, that guy might be on the practice squad. And like a veteran that you can just call up if you need, because
not on the current
practice squad that benefit.
Not on the current practice squad, or you're saying
Correct.
Someone that they just signed and
someone
stashed.
that you sign and stash.
Much like they did
squad.
with Jordan Howard last year.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
All right. The Eagles obviously.
How about Kavon Wallace? I mean, he's one. That pops in my head. I mean, he's clearly only can be poised for a rise, not a decline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and Marcus Epps might be an interesting one.
Yeah, I mean, I think if he has a good year, it's sort of like we all saw it coming because the Eagles were giving him that opportunity. We've seen him flash. It wouldn't be as much of a surprise as if Kavon Wallace sort of kind of came into this year determined, ready, and with a little bit more of a skill set that the Eagles were hoping for.
Yeah, I guess Avonte Maddox had such a good year last year. You're hoping that he doesn't take a step back because he was very dependable.
Correct.
Yep.
Correct. I mean, you're hoping and assuming, and I think it's a fair assumption, but you never know, that Hassan Reddick fits exactly what they want to do well. He rushes the passer. He's still up on that 10 to 12 sacks. But again, we've seen instances where the Eagles or other teams sign a guy, free agent, who's done well somewhere else, and then it just didn't happen here. So hopefully it does.
All right, Geoff Mosher, Football at 4. I like how we're both secretly kind of looking off the side here to see what happens with this at bat, right?
I'm shocked that I haven't accidentally said a Reese Hoskins here or something, or some kind of Phillies reference. But yeah, we're watching here.
Somehow, that ball's crushed. They just won the game. Stubbs with a walk-off jack.
Oh, you kill me. I'm streaming, so I'm 30 seconds behind.
Oh, this ball's going to go way out of here.
Oh, that's amazing. This team in their 9th inning rallies the last 2 weeks are unbelievable.
That's a lefty on lefty. And the funny part is, so I don't know where you are in the game, but whoever the guy is that they just called up, Munoz, he just pinch hit for Stott and struck out. And I'm thinking, Stott hit that home run the other day, the walk-off. Now, I get it. It's lefty-lefty, so they went with a righty. Well, that guy struck out.
There it is. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, they take 2 out of 3 for the Marlins. We can't blast them, right? We say you got to start beating the Marlins, and they're down to the last out. And
I don't know. The way they're winning these games and losing these games, Mike, I don't know if my body can take this for 2 more months.
Stubbs with a walk-off. All right.
Isn't that his second straight? Both of his homers have come off left-handers, right? I thought his last homer, which was a big one, came off a left-hander too.
I'm trying to.
He's 5'2".
Yeah, Stubbs. And by the way that Real Muto has been struggling, it's not going to calm down the calls for people who want to see more of Stubbs.
No, it's definitely not.
Right? By the way, Real Muto did pinch hit in this inning and drew a walk. So.
Right, that is true.
He was on base. All right. By the way, Geoff Mosher, you can check out the Powder Blue podcast. Listen to him talk a little Phils. But InsideTheBirds.com, the Inside the Birds podcast, and the Inside the Birds platform is looking at off-season stuff for the Eagles, as we will do here on Football at 4 tomorrow. Andrew's back with a look at the AFC South, and we'll continue our division previews with him on Thursdays here on Football at 4. All right, Moshe, enjoy that victory.
All right, brother. Have a good one.
There you go. Geoff Mosher, Football at 4.